amazing poetry project staff, texts and volunteers. And before we begin, I wanted to share a few announcements and reminders. So next week, we are hosting Christopher Ray Perez and Imani Elizabeth Jackson on Wednesday, February 19th for a reading, and I hope you can join us for that. The week after, we are hosting a symposium curated by Omar Berada and Simon Fatal, titled In the Rhythms of the World, a celebration of Etel Adnan for her centenary. The event is sold out, but I encourage you to check our website to stay tuned. And also, we will be live streaming the event, so we welcome everyone to join us online if there are no more physical seats available for the event. But this is the beautiful poster for the event here. What else? There are two all-gender bathrooms at the back of the space, accessible, and I have other announcements. Yes, we have also our amazing newsletter is out. I think there was one on each seat, so please grab one if you haven't done so yet. We had books. We had Mosab's books, but they're also sold out. Ammiel's book is on its way from Lithuania. It's not here and with us physically, but definitely you will hear from it. There are postcards at the back. Okay, I think that's it for announcements. I will turn it over to Maryam Monalisa Gharavi, who is our guest introducer for tonight. And I also want to thank Maryam for helping us bring this reading together. So please help me in welcoming Maryam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hi, everyone. Last week on February 4th, poet and scholar Dr. Rifat al-Arir's body was recovered and transferred along with the remains of his brother Salah, his sister Asma, and 4 of his nephews to Ibn Marwan Cemetery in Shuja'iyya, east of Gaza City. So I'd like to dedicate these words to the memory of Rifat al-Arir in memoriam. Nobody gives you a playbook on how to introduce someone like Ammiel Alcalay, who is not only an extraordinary poet, translator, critic, journalist, prose stylist, and public intellectual in the famed age of the death of public intellectuals, but also my friend and mentor. So I'm going to do this in the only way I know how to do it, unevenly and personally and without completion. I also have to confess that it makes me very emotional to be here in the same room with you, Ammiel, and with you, Mosab, in this miraculous triangle. 449 days ago today, the Palestinian poet Mosab Abu Toha was released from forced imprisonment in the An-Naqab desert. And while Ammiel and I have known each other for a very long time, I really struggle to say how long. I may look young, but I have lived. It was this circumstance that brought daily contact between us, not only between us two, but also the human rights attorney Diana Butu and Mosab's poet friends around the country to work toward his release. That November was a prolonged unknowing and urgency and contingency unlike any other, and included 6:15 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. calls to Ammiel's flip phone. He's still the only person I know who uses one. And I had read and known about the Nakba for more than 20 years at this point, and even went to Gaza and witnessed it for myself, and lost 13 friends in the past 15 months. But this moment of lengthened suspension measured our minutes coterminously. I don't want to make an equivalence, but it was coterminous with the release of one of Gaza's own poets who I knew or met virtually through Ammiel. And I mention this to say that there are two poets whose fierce political commitment is just as incendiary and ungovernable as their poetic one. It was in the suburbs of Northern Virginia on the cusp of high school, college, where I first discovered Ammiel's work. I found at a bookstore in DC called Politics and Prose the book 9 Alexandrias, written by the poet Semajdin Mehmedinovich and translated from the Bosnian by Ammiel. One of the 9 cities in post 9/11 America called Alexandria happened to be 2 miles away from my house, and also in the heart of the American project of empire and Coca-Cola. I didn't know when I read Ammiel's nimble and ingenious translation that he is the primary source for providing access to ex-Yugoslav voices and also responsible for publication of the first survivor's account in English from a victim held in a Serb concentration camp, the book The 10th Circle of Hell by Razak Hukanovic. I was so moved by 9 Alexandrias, and particularly the translation, that I simply emailed him. That's just something you did. There wasn't social media. And Ammiel soon after emailed me back. And this correspondence has grown, and he has materially and immaterially supported my work, including my own first translation. Fast forward to 2008, I was working toward a doctorate, and specifically in comparative literature and visual and environmental studies, when Ammiel's father, the celebrated poet Ammiel Alcalay, transitioned to the other realm. And I was back in touch with Ammiel and learned a little bit more of this history. Albert's escape from German Nazis and Italian fascists, his immigration to the US, and did I know, Ammiel asked, that he was one of the founders of the very department where I was puttering along in my graduate work. A few years later, in 2010, casually but passionately, which are 2 words I would use to describe you, Ammiel recounted a project he had initiated at the Center for the Humanities at the CUNY Graduate Center called Lost and Found, the CUNY Poetics Document Initiative, where, as he recounted to me, some of his students were finding abandoned masterpieces collecting dust. These are the masterpieces of new American poetry in the library stacks. And I know when you read people's bios, you're supposed to mention their awards, and I want to mention that in 2017, Ammiel was awarded the American Book Award for Lost and Found, but what I'm at pains to describe is the commitment, service, and zeal at the heart of these endeavors, and perhaps what is untranslatable in trophy. Years after this, I started a series. Honestly, this was just an excuse to speak to poets in new American poetry, for the New Inquiry, and asked Ammiel, who was a friend at this point, would you agree to be interviewed by me, and can I ask you 5 kind of esoteric questions? And I want to also say rest in power to the poet Nikki Giovanni, who's in that series. She just left us. And one of the questions that Ammiel answered is something I want to read back to you. So my question was, to paraphrase Hugo of St. Victor, is there any soil to which you feel native, or is the entire world a foreign land? And this is Ammiel's response. Many soils and mainly sands I feel native to have come around to accepting myself as a New Englander living in Brooklyn who feels less and less at home where he/I live. And before he comes up, I want to read this passage from The Warring Factions, where in a conversation with Benjamin Hollander, Ammiel is asked to ruminate about poetry in this present moment. And it reminded me of our 5 questions. And this is what Ammiel says. Quote, writing and form in the United States, while incredibly rich and unique, are only beginning to grapple with the historical burdens of being part of the world, figuring out why the world is structured the way it is. It is hard to think, for example, of passages that resonate with the absolute particularity and timelessness of the Palestinian Mahmoud Darwish, as he writes about himself as, quote, the poet, retracing the routes of his exile, searching for, quote, the homeland, searching not for the homeland, but for, quote, the boy that used to be in him, who he had left behind someplace and forgotten, end quote. I can think of many writers whose first reaction to such a passage might be that it is sentimental. But if you know something about the poet's personal history, about the historical circumstances of the people he is a part of, and about the time this text refers to, the passage is both revolutionary and lacerating. It is revolutionary in the sense that it opens up personal history and a tradition of writing that has largely concerned itself with the fate of a people. It is lacerating in that it tears open the loneliness and emotional suppression so often woven into a national history. I wanted to end just by making a connection to olive trees. Just bear with me. And thank you so much for helping us sell out those olive trees. Those are our third printing. Poet Mosab has also helped incredibly in getting that aid directly to vetted sources in Gaza. This may be our final printing. But I learned something about olive trees this week, which is that it takes about 60 years for one to create a stable yield, which means that multiple generations of people, in this case Palestinians, have to work together to grow fruits that they themselves will not see, but for their descendants and for the tens of hundreds of years from now. This to me seems like an enormous and unpaybackable debt that unravels everything those of us who live at a remove from land know, inspiring questions like, what do we owe each other? To whom do we pay forward generational debt or public service? And that makes me think of Ammiel, of the clunky but extremely under-examined idea of poetry itself as a form of public service, like an olive tree whose yield may not be entirely knowable in its lifetime. Ammiel Alcalay.
Holy cow. This is a bit overwhelming. You think we might have something meaningful to say. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that great introduction, and Maryam, and I'll have some more thanks when I read from my book, but I want to start with some other work. I want to start with a translation that I did by a young poet living in Gaza, Sahar Rabah. This is called The Bullet. The bullet goes right by you. In the wake of its echo, you count the wishes you're worn out waiting for. You absolve them and say, maybe there's more waiting to a lifetime. The bullet goes right by you, so you sketch string in a paper plane. A child's merciful fingers catch it, only to also be spared by chance from the blood of the massacre. The bullet goes right by you. You sleep an hour longer. You dream a rose grows in the depths of your veins, and light rain falls on the edges of the heart to make room for the poem. The bullet goes right by you. Shadow trees stretch out and doze off like your forgotten grief over there past the fence to the burial ground. The bullet goes right by you. A dove shakes the stars from its wings, casting peace upon your darkened way. The bullet goes right by you, and you smile for a lifetime of living, also delivered by accident and chance. And this is a poem by Nasser Rabah, who happens to be Sahar's father, and this was co-translated by Emnazgal, Khalid Al-Hili, who are both with us, and myself. And apparently this appeared in Harper's yesterday or the day before. This is called Gaza, Gaza. The gifts I didn't send you on war's birthday, the poems wave to me as I close the book like it was dying of gangrene. The bridges between my mouth and what I would say about anything shut down. The barracks next to the tall fence of my life. The time spent with old neighbors before they were scattered by the shell of absence. My dreams walking along with their old cane to a sea that couldn't care less. Last pill in the cabinet of hope. The beads in my rosary are endless and I'm delirious. Gaza, Gaza. Like flags of a country that defeated itself, from the heart to the heart, they came back staring into the void, looking for old addresses in the salty mail. As for the songs embroidered on the dress of sand, the heart flows like a river of purified regret, whirling like a sunflower, like a name dead to the lover, inventing doves. Back to the heart, they came back, stripped of their longing, nervous about how to open the suitcase of absence and let the snakes pour out. I am delirious. Gaza, Gaza. And that is from a book that will be coming out with City Lights towards the end of March, beginning of April, called Gaza, the Poem Said Its Piece. I want to read 3 of my very Gaza-related poems. The first one is called Letter to the Americans, which I wrote in August 2014. Letter to the Americans. You know as well as I do that a people under occupation will be unhappy, that parents will fear for the lives of their precious children, especially when there is nowhere to hide. You know as well as I do that a husband's memory of his wife forced to deliver their child at a checkpoint will not be a happy one. You know as well as I do that the form of her unborn child beaten to death in the womb will never leave a mother's mind. And you know as well as I do that a girl will have cause to wonder at the loss of her grandfather, made to wait on his way to the hospital, and she'll have cause to cry at the bullet lodged in her brother's head. You know as well as I do that watching someone who stole the land you used to till water their garden while you hope some rain might collect to parch your weary throat might cause bitterness. You know as well as I do that a family, a village, a city, and a people punished for the act of an individual might not react well to the idea of 2 sides. You know as well as I do that Hammurabi's code was a great legal precedent and that the translation of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth means 1 punishment for 1 crime, no thing more and no thing less. You know as well as I do that aerial bombardment and white phosphorus and naval blockade and tanks and snipers and barbed wire and walls and house demolitions and land confiscation and the uprooting of olive trees and torture without trial and collective punishment and withholding water and access to the sea and even the sky itself are no match for rocket-propelled grenades and all the nails ever put into every homemade bomb ever made, even though metal still pierces every skin. You know as well as I do that justice dwells in the soul as in the soil. And though you can't ever know what you'd do if you were in someone else's shoes, maybe you would have the strength to carry your elders on your back, the courage to stay at the operating table or drive an ambulance after your children were killed, the nerve to face the daily grief compounded by loss after loss, until all you have left is the unutterable scream you possess in the heave of your breast and the depth of your chest. But you also know as well as I do that the size of the prison increases the capacity to resist, and the extent of the suffering makes fear just another feeling among many, because the most occupied are also the most free, since there are no illusions left but the vision of freedom and how to realize it. You know all this, but you know too, just as I do, that enough is enough, and those below will continue to rise up. This one is in a very different vein from February 2024. It's called It's a Big World, Never Forget. It's a big world. Never forget that we are among the brave, the few, who stood with genocide, who understood the need to withhold water, food, and fuel, even medicine and shelter from human animals who confront us by their very being. We who saw the true danger posed by pregnant women, not to mention their already extant infants, who saw through the subterfuge of doctors and ambulance drivers simply staging farcical escapades to reach hospitals that in any case could no longer serve their purpose on account of our due diligence, and praise to the perhaps even braver who understood full well that classrooms in schools and universities composed of no matter how many stories must have had tunnels under them, which could only mean they were actually terror factories churning out more and more detritus it is our most solemn duty to fully cleanse. And yet, all this bravery in the face of such threat and danger is almost nothing compared to some of our very bravest, those snipers and pilots who took it upon themselves to target not just those armed to the teeth with microphones and cameras, and sometimes even phones, but as well their kin, fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters, even cousins who might once have aided and abetted these others at some indeterminate point in life, perhaps by speaking to them when these monsters had themselves been infants, or in so many other myriad ways we barely dare imagine. And as we cherish these in our memory, let us not forget those, perhaps even braver, who targeted such as armed only with a pen, And were this epic tale of courage to continue, as so we insist it must, let us never forget our even more brave than these, the snipers targeting the wounded, dragged by rope on blankets across the killing fields. And thus so do we uphold our soldiers, each and every one in their hundreds of thousands, of each and every kind and glorious gender, to each their own, as they welcome unarmed men in their nakedness, and even some women shockingly armed in headscarves, caressing them with zip ties and serenading them in blindfold as they make sure to sing our praises upon their very bodies, to break their bones in honor of our truly glorious endeavor. And having recounted all of this, we must still tell in a surge of even greater pride of our wonder as we commit genocide using our favorite superpowers who aid and abet our abject fear and terror, as we man and women our gunboats, as our pilots soar through the perilous air, having only to consider the mortal wind, a cause of nature more truly frightful than any surface-to-air power imaginable, and our tanks and bulldozers, armored, of course, and so happily provided for by yourselves, our most true friends. Thus we combine our meager forces and attack by land, air, and sea to ferret out these beasts and ogres in their solitary missions, sometimes in their tens, nay, even in their hundreds, laying in wait for us, sometimes actually even armed with guns or homemade missiles, as we, the innocent, the good, come only to help and free ourselves of these so-called freedom fighters, come only in our sacred mission to help those we are forced to kill. And yet there is even more. This epic tale cannot end without pointing to the very truest pinnacle of honor, that peak which makes it seem that what we have thus far recounted is almost as nothing, for it is to you, dear reader, that we pay everlasting tribute, to you, the bravest of all, to each and every one of you who still stands steadfastly with us in this, our moment of greatest need. And this one is pretty recent. It's after a wonderful poem by the great Iraqi poet Bulund al-Haidari. My apologies, after Bulund al-Haidari. To the hostages of our policies, my apologies. The petty stenographers of the crooked rulers in the once fancy, now crumbling cities of our fading empire lied then. They lied then and they lie now. Everything they say and write is a lie about law and freedom, about equality and justice, in the rubble of the bombs we make and sell, in the silent cries of limbless orphans, in the night lit by white phosphorus and the relentless sound of buzzing drones. They tell us we used to have things of value, even things we ourselves made, and that it was a place like no other. All I know is that Sinbad once sailed to Gaza, and so to Gaza he'll sail once again. After those poems, or something. So, this is very difficult to do, but in the course of, I timed it, 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a jump cut version of the last book of a 560-page collection, which I want to thank my dream team at Litmus Press, Tracy Grinnell and Miriam Atkin and Maureen Cornwett and Rachel Wilson and Oiku Tekton for their amazing work on this book, which unfortunately, as Miriam said, is on a ship somewhere in the Atlantic heading here. So hopefully we'll have copies in March, but there are postcards in back for ordering. So I'm going to read from the last book, Controlled Demolition, which is a sequel to From the Warring Factions. But I'm going to read the dedication page to the whole book. To Palestinian journalists and media workers assassinated by occupation forces in Gaza and elsewhere, and to all those still working, to the people of Gaza, to Palestine. Quote, "We are nearly a year without destination. I don't know what they want from us." Mahmoud Darwish says, "Those who died miraculously survived life." In the past, I don't agree with this. I always believed that ongoing life means the continued attempts to find joy, love, passion, and success. I believe that death means stopping opportunities, attempts, a kind of surrender, and death is not a way to survive. But in this war, I agree with him, because death is a way to survive this torture we are living. Death is a way to survive displacement. Death is a way to survive the famine and all other things. Message from Sahar Rabah, Al-Maghazi, Gaza, Palestine, 28th July, 2024. Now that the news is furious, my heart is pale and my blood dust. Now no home is there to guide our street to its residents. No street is there to guide an entire city to oblivion. How did the road erase the footsteps of evening that walked it? Nasser Abah from Plaza of Ash, 12th April 2024. Okay, this is from Controlled Demolition, which ostensibly is about 9/11 and many other things. So I'm going to do my best. You see a lot of stickies here, short excerpts. Virgil's Aeneid plays a big role, so there are references to that. My copy of Virgil, tattered boards, no spine, a stamp on the inner cover in fading magenta. And then the title page, The Greater Poems of Virgil, edited by J.B. Greenough and G.L. Kitteridge, Boston, USA, and London, published by Gin and Company, 1902. My last note in the tattered volume, underlined at the end of Book 6, Gate of False Dreams. I walked down West Street, and I noticed that there were body parts on the ground in front of me. As I'm walking, I noticed a foot. I noticed one corner of West Street on the street before Liberty. On the corner, it looked like intestines. Firefighter Frank Vasquez, ladder 15. We were already going into the 12th year of sanctions against Iraq. Stone reliefs of great Assyrian palaces looted to the museums of Paris and London give way to Iraqi state archives, whisked off to the Hoover Institute in Palo Alto. Tank treads over ziggurat, brick at Ur. Any and all such glories simply a prelude, steps along the march of progress from east to west, now ash in these last days of summer. The solemnity in the subway those first days, a sense of reverence as we went under all that death, now just expressionless, tired faces, unmoving lips, rustle of morning, papers, dappled sunlight, gray sky over the bridge. All that rubble, the smoldering piles, not just water, but all the men who put it out. The vehicle was left right there. It was left right there at West and Vesey Street. Just left it there, left everything, just left everything. They tell you if running, don't look back. I was running, looking back, making sure that cloud was coming because it was coming. It was a horrific cloud. It was like this monster coming out of the sky that was going to swallow you up. Then I noticed people jumping off the building. I caught this one guy over there. My eye caught him. It was just one of those things. My eye caught him. I was watching. Faisal Abed, EMT Battalion 8. Columns are trees, the loom is a mast, to sail away, to sail away. When I think of so many friends that have gone on before me, I feel bereft as the world shreds the immensity of their journeys, the depth of thought, articulation, and feeling in each of their formulations, oxygen now, in the thickening miasma suffocating the very being of our imagination to create the illusion of finished business. You don't build a democracy like you build a house, Mr. Wolfowitz said over tea, honey pastries, and water buffalo cheese. Democracy grows like a garden. If you can keep the weeds out and water the plants and you're patient, eventually you get something magnificent. In Joy Gordon's Invisible War, the United States and the Iraq sanctions, she writes, in this chapter, I'm not interested in those measures that were particularly petty or ridiculous, or those that caused inconvenience or discomfort, or marginally worsened poverty, or caused illness, or even caused tens or hundreds of deaths. What I want to explore now is the question of how a human catastrophe of this magnitude came about, what the policies and practices were that caused hundreds of thousands of deaths. These things do not come from blocking shipments of glue and laundry detergent, or even from building useless palaces. Stipulating dual use, U.S. officials claimed kitty litter could stabilize anthrax, fluoride in toothpaste, or the chlorine from bleach in laundry detergent could be extracted for chemical weapons, and viruses for use in biological weapons could be grown with yogurt production equipment. In a 60 Minutes interview aired on May 12, 1996, at the height of the sanctions regime, Leslie Stahl asked U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, We've heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died when in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it? Albright responded, I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it. For the promotional material on her 2018 book, Fascism, A Warning, former Secretary Albright noted that a fascist is someone who claims to speak for a whole nation or group, is utterly unconcerned with the rights of others, and is willing to use violence and whatever other means are necessary to achieve the goals he or she might have. The huge gaping holes in the center of it, these places we once called home or life, as if nothing ever happened then or now, will somehow have to be accounted for. Never inside the country. On whose behalf? In defense of what? Veterans sleeping on the street. Veterans done in by their own hand. So the zodiac turns to a new age, but where's the water? No water on Highway 80. In his Yomiyat al-Harb war diary, the great Iraqi artist Dia al-Azawi, then living in exile in London, responded to the images on television and the newspapers coming from the bombing of Iraq, begun by the U.S. on January 17, 1991. In an unprecedented operation meant to bring the modern state of Iraq back to the pre-industrial age, the U.S. air campaign targeted all key elements of the state's infrastructure. Azawi spent several weeks at home filling sketchbook after sketchbook in answer to the destruction he was seeing. Some of his most striking images respond to the bombing of the Al-Amiriya civilian shelter in Baghdad, where some 1,000 people were spending the night, seeking safe haven from the relentless attack on the city and the country. Early in the morning of February 13th, the shelter was hit by 2 laser-guided smart bombs, each weighing 1 ton, fired from U.S. F-117s, killing 408 people of all ages, the youngest being 7 days old. The Pentagon's director of operations noted that both bombs landed right where they were programmed, while President Bush's spokesperson, Marlon Fitzwater, said, "We don't know why civilians were at that location, but we do know that Saddam Hussein does not share our value for the sanctity of human life." At the beginning of March, as Iraqi troops and others fleeing Kuwait assumed there was a ceasefire, U.S. planes incinerated everything moving along Highway 80, the main thoroughfare leading to Basra. While images of this atrocity were hard to come by, Azawi reacted to a single photograph published in the London Observer of a man reaching up out of his tank, his eye sockets blank, his teeth gritted in rigor mortis, and his charred remains frozen in place. In victim's portrait, color is restored to the man's face and dignity to his mouth. The burned-out blackness has been relegated to the background, and you can feel the artist's hand as it moves in rage and love from ochre to red, from white and yellow and black to green and blue. And how do we get from there and Operation Artichoke, MK Ultra, and Gottlieb the Chemist to Rumsfeld and Saddam shaking hands in Baghdad in 1984, to radios that didn't work and the toxic dust at Ground Zero? By way of Mueller and Whitey Bulger, by way of Camp Ontario, a place of murder and mayhem, and George Hunter White of the FBN and OSS, trainer of Colby Helms, and so many more via the Dulles brothers and Wall Street. Always Wall Street, Wiesner, Angleton, and all the genteel rest, with White, the pervert thug, now operating as Morgan Hall, activating mob and Cuban rat lines to inundate the jazz clubs, and in particular target Billie Holiday, the Mark Twain Hotel, San Francisco, 1949, before Operation Ajax and PB Success. Whole governments and countries and economies, Gladio and Northwoods, Mockingbird, Lumumba, all the way to Dealey Plaza, the Audubon Ballroom in Wilshire Boulevard, the ice cooler at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, the balcony at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, and the Phoenix program run out of Saigon, all gets us closer and closer, but for the insatiable lust of clean money laundered and bleached, both sides of the fire fed by BCCI, fed by Banco Lavoro, Hill and Knowlton and Iran-Contra. In webs so intricate, I have not the wherewithal to even attempt depicting them. You must look at Mark Lombardi's drawings, but he, poor soul, ended up dangling from a sprinkler pipe in his own studio, an open bottle of champagne hanging beside him the night of his grand opening, March 22nd, 2000, before the towers, after 8 years of bloody war between Iran and Iraq, 1980 to 1988. Before the towers, Dates do matter. Things intertwine. The Mujahideen, the end of the Soviet Union, the wars of succession, so much unfinished business. Madrid turned into Oslo, and the Tunisians in their limousines and tailored Italian suits would stage a return to command those who never left or had already come back, like Ali, 17 years later after the huge prisoner exchange before the first Intifada. We often walked from the office to Salahuddin or Damascus Gate, talking and talking and talking about all manner of things. Or Jamila, whom I'd meet at Jaffa Gate, and from there we'd stop at her family's pharmacy just before closing to check in and say hello. In the bus once, on the way to her house in Beit Hanina, she told me everything she remembered from the war when her father was killed. We'd sit on her porch, her mother inside, talking and drinking lemonade of an early evening. So many familiar faces suddenly thrust into the public eye, the war of stones and slingshots and broken limbs eviscerated in the pit of discourse, the shackles that had burst asunder snapped shut, Hagar drowned in a wadi, Faisal dead in Kuwait. If the aim is to regain our senses, is there a way to write again past the point of saturation, of overproduction, to plumb the depth of linguistic memory? By this obsessive scratching at the surface of events, by this relentless turning of the prism. Cast headlong into the waters, the first is left nameless. Had I 100 tongues, 100 mouths, a voice as strong as iron? I'm going to be haunted by the dust for the rest of my life. So Jeanette McKinley of 110 Liberty Street, across Building 4, brief as that rest would be, diagnosed with brain cancer, then paralyzed by a stroke. She died in 2010. Captain Philip Ravullo, sitting with a group of firefighters. You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails like you're in a foundry, like lava. Yeah, chimed in others, like lava from a volcano. Fear, harsh grief, and many shapes of slaughter. Imperative to name evil, mandate the quick corrective. Far too many report what they actually see and hear, if even only for a day or two, before state business became none of our business, as if it was inevitable, the fault of everyone, and no one paid to destroy and paid to rebuild. They're going after our brains, says Lieutenant Colonel Jabbar Abu Natiha, head of Baghdad's police organized crime unit. It is a big operation, maybe even a movement. And I would add our eyes and ears and hearts as passports turn up intact in the dust and rubble, and almost half the list of hijackers turn up alive. And now again, at what temperature does steel lose its strength? Like an anvil sitting on our tongue, like an owl on a dollar bill, like an owl in the light, like the eye of a pyramid, the carcass of a fish, the mockery of water, the cedar coffin of Osiris. That evening, President Bush made it clear this would be a war with no boundaries. In a live televised address, he declared, "We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them." Of the many dead, some they buried in the earth, some they hauled to nearby fields. I have a lot to say, Elias began at our gathering to celebrate Faraj's book, but I don't know how to put it. Because, it's a mélange, it's a mixture of emotions and remembering. More than 20 years ago, time. It shows us that poetry can overcome time, and in this sense, poetry can overcome us. Reading this book will not take us to the past. It will take us to the present, and it will take us to the future. Read this book to discover the present of our world. It's a terrible world. But when we have this book in our hands, I have the feeling, if not of freedom itself, I have bits of freedom, because we are seeking freedom, as if we are scratching at bits of freedom, because this is our only way to feel that we are still human beings. Coda. I know the mariner of mariners, the one whose story I will tell you, proclaims Muzaffar al-Nawab, poet from Iraq, speaking with and for those with something to say. I know the driver of drivers, and it is me, having by now driven hundreds of thousands of miles on the surface of the roads of my country day and night, in every season and every kind of weather, in cars and trucks, through forlorn and forgotten towns and cities that have surely seen much better days than those or these. I haven't been to the 9/11 memorial and only found out as I was writing this that a line from Virgil's Aeneid in letters shaped of steel remains from the collapse greets visitors at the site. No day shall erase you from the memory of time. A perfect line and thought. But it occurs in Book 9, commemorating the lover warriors Nisus and Euryalus, who, in pitched battle, almost greedy with rage and bloodlust, go on a killing spree before Euryalus himself, thoughtless boy, is killed with Nisus to follow. Then, pierced, he cast himself upon his lifeless friend. There at last he found his rest in death. Soon the heads of both warriors are fastened on uplifted spikes. And if it had been another line, such as, I could not find you, friend, or bury you before I left, or I weep for righteousness, for ancient trust. In my copy of Virgil, Tattered Boards, No Spine, that I began this with, and which I've had now almost 50 years, Greenough and Kitteridge write, yet the traditions are no longer living. The machinery is no longer a matter of belief. The traditions are dug out by antiquarian research. The machinery is manufactured to order, as it were, in a modern workshop. Has that been my way here? The soul protects, commiserates with, and shelters the body. Like when memory protected from oblivion the poems Farage couldn't write in one prison until he was transferred to another, and found tea that could stand in for ink to unburden memory and begin to forget. And all these voices keep asking me to take them, as if you could break the bonds of fate and scatter purple flowers. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ammiel. This was such a beautiful reading. I was also, before he began to read, Ammiel was mentioning also that back in the early 2000s, around the beginning of the Iraq War, he organized with Anne Waldman a series of events called Poetry is News. And I found a short excerpt also in our newsletter in which we talk about that event. And I'm just going to read a really short passage from that interview because I think it really sort of resonates with tonight's reading. So in the interview you say, Anne Waldman and I organized a number of day-long events at the project called Poetry is News. There were many great moments in the spirit of teach-ins of the 60s. Our first speakers included a friend, Rebecca Murray, who had been involved with the International Solidarity Movement, of which Rachel Corrie had been a part of. And she described riding with ambulances through the occupied territories in Palestine. She was followed by the great Lebanese novelist, I didn't know that, Ilyas Khouri, who gave a rousing talk that was seized upon when it was later attacked by neocons for, quote, bringing Arabs to places like the Poetry Project. So, in the spirit of bringing Arabs to the Poetry Project, it is now my great honor to introduce Mosab Abu Toha. Mosab Abu Toha is a Palestinian poet, short story writer, and essayist from Gaza. His first collection of poetry, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award for Poetry and won the Palestine Book Award, the American Book Award, and the Walcott Poetry Prize. Abu Toha is also the founder of the Edward Said Library in Gaza, which he hopes to rebuild. He recently won an Overseas Press Club Award for his Letter from Gaza columns for The New Yorker. His new book, Forest of Noise, has been named a New York Times notable book of the Year, as well as a New Yorker Best Book. In the biography I just read, Mosab Abu Toha is described as a short story writer, a poet, an essayist. If we believe that poetry is more than a craft, a consciousness that contains crowds, the biographical conjunction might seem unnecessary. We could simply say that Mosab Abu Toha is a poet, and that would be enough, since a poet can also be a writer, an essayist, a librarian, a survivor of genocide, a child of the refugee camp, a father and a son, a relentless advocate, reminding us that there is no way to be a poet without believing in a free Palestine. Within the reach of his multiple voices, Mosab has been calling on us for the past year and a half, with essays, letters from Gaza, social media updates, evidence upon evidence of Zionist massacres that challenge not only our ability to witness, but the very belief that testifying to the cruelty of an event can alter its course. All accountability mechanisms shamelessly undermined by a liberal world order that has and is still witnessing a genocide unfold under its wide open eyes. If evidence is drained of its semantic and legal power, we must rethink the meaning of the witness. Imagine an order of reality where brains, quote, protruding from their slashed heads would be a line impossible to write, because impossible to experience. Imagine a language made of holes, dust, and smoke, one that conveys and sustains the misalignment between material destruction and immaterial wound in a tense, asymptotic relation. The poetic subject of Mosab's poem is split, disoriented, caught between the time of empire as it slickly progresses towards its own downfall and the time of Gaza, where a derailed chronology blurs the borders between life and death. On every street corner or what remains of it, the extinction zone swells and expands. The poems in Forest of Noise work precisely against the fog of indistinction, removing, quote, the rubble stone after stone, reintroducing singular images within a nondescript heap of dust and debris, momentarily clearing, quote, air stuffed with ash so that lungs can breathe. Only last week, the remains of Mosab's dear friend, the poet Rifat al-Arir, were located, his family finally able to lay him to rest. With language, Mosab engages the labor of location, pages becoming sites populated with particulars. A hungry cat, a little moon in the dark sky, drops of water, a piece of bread. The camp may have been reduced to rubble, but the physical sensation of meandering narrow alleyways endures. The body knows when to turn left, follow the echo of a scent, or retrace the faded limits of a makeshift football field where it once played for hours. Perhaps more than a poetry of witness, Mosab crafts a poetic of address. Every dispatched, whether directed to a mother, a dead brother, a wife, or a reader, is a leap of faith, a wager that language will reach us. The same way Mosab kept reaching us throughout the most brutal days of the Palestinian genocide. A mode of communication called language that, in its promise, can retrieve a name from the rubble, will retrieve a name from the rubble. As Mosab writes of name, your name reminds me there is a goal. Please join me in welcoming Mosab Abu Toha.
Thank you so much, Maryam. Thank you, Poetry Project. It's a great honor to share the stage with a dear friend and one of the first champions of my work as a growing poet, Ammiel. Thank you so much, Ammiel. Not sure what's okay. Okay, maybe that's how it works. Okay. وليل كموج البحر أرخى سدوله علي بأنواع الهموم ليبتلي فقلت له لما تمطى بصلبه وأردف أعجازا وناء بكلكلي ألا أيها الصبح الطويل ألا انجلي بصبح وما الإصباح فيك بأجمل. If I must die, if I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite that you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. I'm going to sing. I think many of you know this song, and I hope you will help me. يما مويلي الهوى يما مويلي ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم الناذل فيا يما مويلي الهوى يما مويلي ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم الناذل فيا ومشيت تحت الشتاء والشتاء رواني والصيف لما أتى شعل من نيراني بضل عمر فداني در للحرية. Thank you. Palestine, AZ. A. An apple that fell from the table on a dark evening when man-made lightning flashed through the kitchen, the streets, and the sky, rattling the cupboards and breaking the dishes. Am is the linking verb that follows I in the present tense when I'm no longer present, when I'm shattered. B. A book that doesn't mention my language or my country and has maps of every place except for my birthplace, as if I were an illegitimate child on Mother Earth. Borders are those invented lines drawn with ash on maps and sewn into the ground by bullets. C. Gaza is a city where tourists gather to take photos next to destroyed buildings or graveyards. A country that exists only in my mind. Its flag has no room to fly freely, but there is a space on the coffins of my countrymen. D. Dar means house. My grandparents left their house behind in 1948 near Yafa Beach. A tree my father told me about stood in the front yard. Dreams of children and their parents of listening to songs or watching plays at Al Mishal Cultural Center. Israel destroyed it in August 2018. I hate August, but plays are still performed in Gaza. Gaza is the stage, and according to Trump, Gaza is a demolition site. R, I'm skipping now. R, I was born in November. My mother told me she was walking on the beach with my father. It turned stormy and began to rain. My mother felt pain, and an hour later she gave birth to me. I love the rain and the sea. The last two things I heard before I came into this horrible world. Shrapnel looking for laughter. The house has been bombed. Everyone is dead. The kids, the parents, the toys, the actors on TV, characters in novels, personas in poetry collections, the I, the he, and the she. No pronouns is left, not even for kids when they learn parts of a speech next year. Shrapnel flies in the dark, looks for the families, peals of laughter hiding behind piles of disfigured walls and bleeding picture frames. The radio no longer speaks, its batteries have burned, the antenna is broken. Even the broadcaster felt the pain when the radio was hit, even we, hearing the bomb as it fell, threw ourselves to the ground, each of us counting the others around them. We were safe, but our hearts still ache. So that was from Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, published in 2022. And still the poems keep happening. So that poem, Shrapnel Looking for Laughter, was written about At-Tanani family, the whole family that was massacred in an Israeli airstrike in May 2021. The father, the mother, and their 4 children. The oldest was 10 years old. And I was standing at the window watching the airstrikes before I learned about them the next morning. And look how many families were just like them, even before I knew about them. From Forest of Noise. Every child in Gaza is me. Every mother and father is me. Every house is my heart. Every tree is my leg. Every plant is my arm. Every flower is my eye. Every hole in the earth is my wound. My dreams as a child. I still have dreams about a room filled with toys my mother always promised we could have if we were rich. I still have dreams about seeing the refugee camp from a window on a plane. I still have dreams about seeing the animals I learned about in 3rd grade: elephant, giraffe, kangaroo, and wolf. I still have dreams about running for miles and miles with no border blocking my feet, with no unexploded bombs scaring me off. I still have dreams about my favorite team playing soccer on the beach, me waiting on the other side for the ball to come my way and run away with it. I dream still about my grandfather, how much I want to pick oranges with him in Jaffa. But my grandfather died. Jaffa is occupied, and oranges no longer grow in his weeping groves. No art. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Elizabeth Bishop. You know everything will come to an end. The sugar, the tea, the dried sage, the water. Just go to the market and restock. Even your shadow will abandon you when there is no light. So just keep things that require only you. The book of poems that only you can decipher. The blank map of a country whose villages and cities only you can recognize. I've personally lost 3 friends to war, a city to darkness, and a language to fear. This was not easy to survive, but survival proved necessary to master. But of all things, losing the only photo of my grandfather under the rubble of our house was a real disaster. We are looking for Palestine. I remember I wrote this poem after I read Najla's book, Looking for Palestine. We are looking for Palestine. So by the way, the 3 poems that I wrote were written before October 7th. We are looking for Palestine. The sun rises and moves around. It sets to visit other places, and we are looking for Palestine. The birds wake up and look for food. They chirp on the blossoming trees laden with fruit, with peaches, apples, apricots, and oranges, and we are looking for Palestine. The sea waves lap against the shore. They glitter and dance with the fishers' boats, and we are looking for Palestine. People travel to relatives and friends. They book round-trip tickets, stuff their suitcases with gifts and books and clothes, and we are still looking for Palestine. Sir, we have no seaport or airport, no trains, no highways. We have no passable roads, sir. We do have crutches and wheelchairs. Young men with 1 or no legs, no longer able to work, as if there was work. We travel to the West Bank or Egypt for surgery, even to set a broken leg. But we need a permit to enter. We stuff our suitcases with pictures and memories. They feel very heavy on the ground. We can't carry them, neither can the roads. They scar the surface of the earth. We get lost in the present, past, and the future. When a child is born, we feel sad for him or her. A child is born here to suffer, sir. A mother feels the great pain and labor. A child cries after leaving her dark place. In Palestine, our dark is not safe. In Palestine, children always cry. If we want to travel, we leave many times. In Gaza, you leave via either Erez or Rafah, a hard escape to make. So we search for the visa interview in Cairo, Istanbul, or Amman, but not in Palestine. We don't have embassies here. The one in Jerusalem is farther than the Andromeda galaxy. Andromeda is 2.5 million light years away, but our years stay heavy and dark. It would take trillions of years. Sir, we are not welcome anywhere. Only cemeteries do not mind our bodies. We no longer look for Palestine. Our time is spent dying. Soon, Palestine will search for us, for our whispers, for our footsteps, our fading pictures fallen off blown-up walls. My library. This is also, again, before October 7th, because my library is under the rubble of our house. My books remain on the shelves as I left them last year, but all the words have died. I search for my favorite book, Out of a Place, by Edward Said. I find it lying lonely in a drawer next to the photo album and the old Nokia phone. The pen inside the book is still intact, but some ink drops have leaked. Some words breathe its ink. The pen like a ventilator for a dozen patients. Home, Jerusalem, the sea, Haifa, the rock, the oranges, the sand, the pigeon, Cairo, my mother, Beirut, books, the rock, the sea, the sea. What a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike. I should write another poem, what a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike when they are intent. But this poem was written before October 7th. I didn't have the time to write that poem. What a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike. Turn off the lights in every room, sit in the inner hallway of the house, away from the windows, stay away from the stove, stop thinking about making black tea, have a bottle of water nearby, big enough to cool down children's fear. Get a child's kindergarten backpack and stuff tiny toys and whatever amount of money there is, and the ID cards and photos of late grandparents, aunts or uncles, and the grandparents' wedding invitation that's been kept for a long time. And if you are a farmer, you should put some strawberry seeds in one pocket and some sand from the balcony flower pot in the other, and hold on tight to whatever number there was on the cake from the last birthday. Request letter. He pens a quick letter on paper, a letter as plain in regard to form as possible with no white spaces, like in Ammiel's book, and he throws it in the graveyard at night. Angel of death, when you collect the souls of those killed in an airstrike, do you mind leaving a sign for us so we know who is who? Because last time, my old kindergarten teacher couldn't recognize her daughter's face, which ear or arm or bloody finger on the dusty streets was hers. And a father wouldn't recognize which was his child if it wasn't for the size of shoes still on the sole, 28 European size. On the back of the paper, he pens the same letter in Arabic because who could know what language the angel of death uses, the most spoken language in the world? or the language of God. إلى ملك الموت. عندما تجمع أرواح من قتلوا في الغارة الجوية، هل تمانع بأن تترك لنا إشارة تدلنا على من هو من؟ لأنه في المرة الماضية لم تستطع معلمتي الكبيرة أيام الروضة أن تتعرف على وجه ابنتها. أية أذن أو ذراع أو أصبع مدمي في الشارع المغبر كان لابنتها. وكذا أب لم يستطع أن يعرف أية طفلة كانت ابنته لولا حجم الحذاء. 28 بالمقياس الأوروبي كان منقوشا على نعل الحذاء الذي اشتراه لها للعام الدراسي الجديد. Right or left. And I wrote this poem for a sister of a friend of mine. The friend was killed, the sister was killed, their parents were killed, and 2 other sisters. And the body of my friend and his sister and his father are still buried under the rubble of their house in Deir al-Balah since November 2023. So I wrote this poem to the sister. Her name is Nariman Abu Ghaban. Right or left. Under the rubble, her body has remained for days and days. When the war ends, we try to remove the rubble, stone after stone. We only find one small bone from her body. It is a bone from her arm. Right or left, it does not matter as long as we cannot find the henna from her neighbor's wedding on her skin, or the ink from a school pen on a little index finger. This whole poem was written after October 7th and also the one before. Under the rubble. She slept on her bed, never woke up again. Her bed has become her grave, a tomb beneath the ceiling of her room, the ceiling a cenotaph. No name, no year of birth, no year of death, no epitaph, only blood and a smashed picture frame in ruin next to her. In Jabalia camp, a mother collects her daughter's flesh in a piggy bank, hoping to buy her a plot on a river in a faraway land. This part is for my wife's uncle, Nasim Abu Shadiq, who was killed by a sniper just a few days after we learned about Rifat's death. So my wife's uncle, Nasim Abu Shadiq, he was abducted just like so many other men from inside a school shelter in Beit Lahia, North Gaza. He was taken to Kamal Udwan Hospital at the time, which the Israelis many times used as an interrogation center. So he had to remove all his clothes, and then a few hours he was let go, and he didn't have his clothes, so the nurses and doctors gave him a white uniform. By the time he arrived at the gate to the school, he was shot by a sniper. His name was Nasim. And I told a friend of mine that I have another friend who, I don't want to tell you this story, but anyway. So Nasim is survived by his wife and 2 kids. The youngest is 1 year old. Or older, a little bit older. And why I told you this story is because Nasim was born deaf and mute. So until this moment, I can't imagine what conversation he had with these thugs, and whether he heard the bullet when it was fired. A group of mute people were talking sign. When a bomb fell, they fell silent. It rained again last night. The new plant looked for an umbrella in the garage. The bombing got intense, and our house looked for a shelter in the neighborhood. I leave the door to my room open so the words in my books, the titles and names of authors and publishers could flee when they hear the bombs. I became homeless once, but the rubble of my city covered the streets. They could not find a stretcher to carry your body. They put you on a wooden door they found under the rubble. Your neighbors, a moving wall. The scars on our children's faces will look for you. Our children's amputated legs will run after you. This part happened many times about the parents who went out to get some bread for their kids, but they were killed in an airstrike and the bread was circling their body in pools of blood. He left his house to buy some bread for his kids. News of his death made it home, but not the bread. No bread. Death sits to eat whoever remains of the kids. No need for a table. No need for bread. A father wakes up at night, sees the random colors on the walls drawn by his 4-year-old daughter. The colors are about 4 feet high, but next year they would be 5. But the painter has died in an airstrike. There are no colors anymore. There are no walls. I changed the order of my books on the shelves. 2 days later, the war broke out. Beware of changing the order of your books. What are you thinking? What thinking? What you? You. Is there still you? You there? Where should people go? This is not a question to Trump, of course. Where should people go? Should they build a big ladder and go up? But heaven has been blocked by the drones and F-16s and the smoke of death. My son asks me whether when we return to Gaza, I could get him a puppy. I tell him, I promise, if we can find any. I ask my son whether he wishes to become a pilot when he grows up. He tells me he doesn't wish to drop bombs on people and houses. When we die, our souls leave our bodies, take with them everything they loved in our bedrooms, the perfume bottles, the makeup, the necklaces, and the pens. In Gaza, our bodies and rooms get crushed. Nothing remains for the souls. Even our souls, they get crushed under the rubble for weeks. I'll read a new poem before ending with one more. The title of this poem is A Hand is No Longer a Hand. After the airstrike, near a mulberry tree and some wild plant, they found the unmoving body of a boy. An eye was completely closed, the other was half open, watching for any piece of shrapnel that could kill him again. In my city, the army rounded up all the men, faced them, forced them to stand against the wall of the primary school. The hands raised, touched the newly painted bricks as if getting prepared to play the piano before the bullets drummed on shivering heads and backs. During the airstrikes, we sat on the tiled, dusty floor, stuck still as pills in a bottle in a pharmacy in a town where no one gets sick, where everybody is dead. I look at his wrist. It is crushed, nearly severed. And then at his shoulder, a bone is fractured. He is 4 years old. I say to my wife, "Oh, look, how brave he is. He is not crying. No pain, no tears, even with no parents beside him." I set my eyes on his face. His eyes are not moving. His heart is not beating. He is taking a rest. A hand is no longer a hand as long as it does not find another hand to shake, as long as it does not find food to share with others, as long as it does not find a pen to write, as long as it's the only food a dog can find to eat, as long as it goes missing forever. And so many of you saw dogs and cats eating the bodies of our brothers and sisters. Is this really it? Us waking up every morning, tell you about a massacre that happened overnight? Is our only job to report on our deaths, film or on our deaths, film our cut-off bodies, and ask you for help? When do you wake up? Is it okay with you to wake up, to find your house on fire, to find your child charred, to find your wife in a hospital with no medicine, to find your neighborhood a heap of rubble, to not wake up? Wake up. Enough watching us while sitting on a chair or reclining on a couch. We are drowning in your silence. We are screaming, but you took off your ears, you put them in your earbud cases. We see the blood as it gushes from the cases. The blood is our cries, our tears, our blood. You get displaced, you get wounded, yet survived. You get wounded, yet survive. You jump off your cot when a missile hits the hospital. You shelter in a tent, you get displaced again. You get displaced again and again, on crutches, on wheelchair. You get gazumed a zillion times. He never woke up. I can see a juicer, a mattress, a blanket, what remains of a closet, what remains of a basket, and maybe a potato or an onion. The dust makes it difficult to distinguish a potato from an onion. But I can distinguish death. I can see it in the open mouth, in the closed eyes. I can see every one of us under the rubble. If we stay in our houses, they bomb us. If we shelter in a school, they bomb us. If we run to a hospital, they bomb us. If we move into a tent, they bomb us. If we go to a toilet, they bomb us. If we run from an airstrike, they bomb us. If we do not do any of this, they still bomb us. If we stay like a tree or temporarily leave like a leaf in the fall, they bomb us. But spring will come, and those who bomb us, will find no bombs among the flowers. We will be on the trees bathing in the sun, and those who bomb us, will have no sun, no place to rest, and no legs to run. Last one from this book. The moon. And just a brief context for this poem. I wrote it after I left Gaza in December 2023. And I continued to watch, unfortunately, my people being massacred on a daily basis. And there were two pictures. I'm sure some of you saw them. One of them was a video and another picture of a father and his daughter who were killed in the street, and they were carrying their backpacks. And of course, whatever there was on their backpacks contained everything that they could get with them. And then there was the other video of a young man, maybe my age, maybe younger, maybe older. He was killed in the street. And of course, so many people who were killed in the street remained in the street for days and weeks and months, because Israel would even kill you if you approach the people who were already killed. So there were maybe 7, I didn't count the cats, but there were about 7 cats feeding on the corpse of this young man. So this poem is about these two, picture and video. The moon. She's lying on the asphalt, her small belly, her chest, her forehead, her hands, her cold feet bare in the night. A hungry cat paces. Shrapnel rings as it hits neighboring houses already bombed. The hungry cat sees the girl, her wounds still warm, hungrier. The girl's father lies next to her on his back. The backpack he wears still has the girl's favorite candy and a small toy. The girl was waiting till they arrived to eat her lollipop. The cat gets close to try the flesh. A bomb pounds the street. No flesh, no girl, no father, no cat. Nobody is hungry. The moon overhead is not the moon. Thank you.
Mosab Abu Toha. Shukran, Mosab. Thank you so much, Ammiel, as well. Thank you, Monalisa, for your beautiful introduction. I also want to thank the event support staff working tonight, Anna, Nicole, Will, Kay, and Heather, our audio techs, Noah and James, our videographers, Cerine and Gary, as well as all our volunteers working tonight. And I also want to thank you for coming and for being here tonight, and I hope you come back soon to the Poetry Project. Thank you.